A single kick of a football can alter the course of a nation's history. Beyond the scoreline, the truly legendary strikes have shifted tactics, inspired millions, and redefined what is physically possible on a pitch. This is the story of how the greatest goals in World Cup history didn't just win matches, they changed the beautiful game forever. To understand how a goal can change football, you have to start in Mexico City, in the final of 1970. Brazil against Italy. The score is 3-1, the game already won, and then Brazil decide to sign their masterpiece. It begins deep in their own half. 9 of the 11 outfield players touch the ball. It moves without panic, without haste, a slow tightening of a noose. Clodoaldo dancing past 4 Italians, Jairzinho drifting inside, the ball finding Pelé on the edge of the box. And Pelé does something almost arrogant in its calm. He doesn't even look. He rolls the ball to his right into what looks like empty space, but the space isn't empty. Thundering into it from fullback comes the captain, Carlos Alberto, and he strikes the ball so cleanly it seems to accelerate as it crosses the line. This was more than a goal. It was an argument. Settled. For years, there had been a question hanging over the game. Could beautiful, expansive, attacking football actually win at the highest level? Or was it a luxury that tournaments punished? Brazil's answer arrived at the speed of Carlos Alberto's shot. A defender finishing a move that started 80 yards away was proof that football didn't have to choose between artistry and victory. It could have both. The ripple was immediate and permanent. Coaches around the world began to see the fullback not as a last line of defense, but as a weapon waiting at the edge of the attack. The overlapping run, the defender who scores, ideas we now take for granted, trace their lineage straight back to that single surge into the box. Carlos Alberto didn't just score the greatest team goal ever filmed, he showed the sport a version of itself it had never dared to fully believe in. 4 minutes. That's all that separated football's greatest sin from its greatest miracle. In a quarter-final in 1986 against England, Diego Maradona punched the ball into the net with the hand of God. And then, before the outrage had even settled, he answered it with something no rulebook could argue with. He collected the ball in his own half, back to goal, surrounded. What happened next lasted around 10 seconds and has been replayed for 4 decades. He turned, and then he simply went. Past 1, past 2, gliding away from challenges that never quite arrived. The whole of England's midfield and defense reduced to spectators at their own execution. He rounded the goalkeeper and slid the ball home with the outside of his left foot. The commentators ran out of language. In Argentina, grown men wept. This was voted the goal of the century, and the title undersold it. But look, this was a nation 4 years removed from the Falklands War, a country carrying wounds far deeper than sport. And, for the length of 1 run, Maradona gave them something no politician could. He made an entire people feel invincible. The goal became folklore, proof that a single man could carry a country on his back and answer history with his feet. And tactically, it left a challenge that still echoes. Maradona's genius was a problem the sport spent the next 30 years trying to solve. How do you stop that? The answer became the modern game itself. Compact defensive blocks, doubling up on the playmaker, the entire architecture of pressing built in part to make sure no one could ever again walk through a team the way Diego walked through England. Every time you see a defense collapse around a number 10, you're watching football still trying to answer a question Maradona asked in 1986. Not every goal that changed football was scored on the World Cup stage itself. Some changed what players believed they could bring to it. In the summer of 1997, in a tournament on French soil in the same nation that would host the World Cup a year later, Brazil's left back stepped up to a free kick 35 yards out at an angle so tight it looked pointless. What he did next, engineers and physicists, he struck it with the outside of his left foot with the raw violence of a clearance, and the ball set off, wide, so far wide that a ball boy standing yards from the post flinched and ducked, and then, impossibly, it turned. In its final meters, it swerved back through the air, bending around the wall and past a goalkeeper who never moved, because nothing in his experience told him the ball was coming. Scientists later gave it a name, the Magnus effect. Spin so severe the ball carved a curve through the air like a boomerang, but footballers didn't need the equations. They just saw the impossible happen, filed it away, and started to chase it. This is how a single strike rewires a sport. Before Roberto Carlos, a free kick from that distance and that angle was a wasted set piece, a moment to recycle possession. After him, it was a genuine threat. He expanded the map of where danger could come from. A whole generation of dead ball specialists, the ones who made goalkeepers fear anything within 40 yards, grew up trying to reverse engineer that curve. He didn't just score a goal that shouldn't exist. He moved the boundary of what the sport considered possible. And every player who watched it inherited a little more imagination than they had the day before. For a while, it was tempting to believe the age of the impossible goal had passed. That in a sport now measured in data, drilled in structure and scouted to the last centimeter, there was no more room for a moment that stopped the world. Then, in Rio de Janeiro in 2014, a 22-year-old Colombian caught a ball on his chest with his back to goal. James Rodríguez had one thought, and it was a volley from outside the box that kissed the underside of the bar on its way in. Control, imagination, nerve, that it won the award for the goal of the entire tournament.